I know, yeah, exactly.
I mean, it's great when you're there.
Hi everyone, this calls to order the meeting of the San Francisco Elections Commission. Today is Wednesday, November 16th, and the time is 6:02 p.m. There are copies of the agenda and the agenda packet on the table if anybody wants to have a copy. We will begin with roll call. Commissioner Jung?
Here.
Commissioner Yu? Here. Commissioner Savant? Here. I'm here. Commissioner Rowe? Commissioner Paris?
Here.
Commissioner Donaldson? Here. Commissioner Jadonic?
Here.
Item 2, general public comment for items that aren't otherwise on an item on the agenda. Do we have any public who wants to speak on an item that's not on the agenda? Welcome.
Hello, my name is Savannah Rigo, and I came before you 1 year ago to advocate for the open source election project. Election system security is a subject I have studied, and I am a high school student of politics. I was looking forward to seeing the first woman elected as president. But now I am sad to see we have gone down a very dark road due to the unsecure voting systems. I again urge you to immediately move forward for my sake and the sake of the young people all over the world towards secure voting systems. I know there might be corporate interests blocking this effort, but please stand strong for the San Francisco, California, the United States, and the world. The time is now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Brent Turner. I'm with California Association of Voting Officials. I want to read a quick statement from the association. San Francisco is uniquely positioned to lead the state and country towards safe and secure elections. In 2007, we attempted to block the purchase of the Sequoia system, but certain members of the board and the mayor did not understand that necessity. That purchase completed, and that money was expended for a system deemed insecure by government study. Since then, we have been fighting at nearly every turn to educate the political process locally and nationally. Recently, New Hampshire adopted the front-end voter interface and disability components of our preferred GPL open source system. In San Francisco, the mayor, the supervisors, and the elections commission have all resolved toward the open source voting system. John Arts and his business league, the California Association of Clerks and Election Officials, do not advocate open source systems. We believe that is due to Microsoft and the vendor control over the county clerks. The vendors sponsor the clerks at gatherings and send them on junkets, etc. The CA CEO lobbyist, Barry Brokow, is also a lobbyist for Microsoft. Mr. Arntz keeps buying systems from the same salesperson, Steve Bennett. There are millions of taxpayer dollars changing hands for insecure systems. Recently, Arntz stated to John Wildemuth at the Chronicle that the slated open source system would be delayed. Mr. Arntz is intentionally delaying, likely at the direction of the vendor. Please ask John Arntz to move the open source project forward quickly. We realize he may do so now against his true will and desire. So even if he does so ostensibly, the work will have to be extensively monitored to prevent against manipulation. These unfortunate circumstances are all likely cause for the commission to replace Director Arntz sooner rather than later. He has dug in his heels and made it very clear the security of the election is not his priority. Thank you.
Hold on a second. I have a question about that. Over here. So you said that Director Arntz and his business league, and you said that the vendor sends those persons on junkets. Are you suggesting that that vendor, whoever that is, sends Director Arntz on junkets, and that's coloring his decisions with respect to?
I'm not suggesting anything. I'm just stating a fact, Commissioner. The CA CEO sponsors junkets as the...
No, hold on a second. My question is very specific. So are you saying that a vendor has sent Director Arntz on a junket, and that is coloring his decision making?
I don't know what exactly is coloring his decision making. I know we keep buying from the same salesperson, no matter what company he's with.
Thank you. Do we have any?
Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comment on item 2 for items that are not otherwise on the agenda?
Hi, my name is Susan Pfeiffer. It's my first time to do public comment here. I worked very hard on the presidential election, and like many others was deeply disappointed in the results and the Russian hacking, and have been concerned about the integrity of voting systems for a long time. I believe that John Arntz is a decent clerk. I'm not here to badmouth, but I know that this commission and the Board of Supervisors has approved research and money to go forward with open source code voting systems in San Francisco. And I think this is one of the most important issues in our democracy right now. And I'm concerned that we have not moved forward with that. So I'm here today to ask if anything you can do or any influence you can express with Arntz to please move that process forward. San Francisco has always been a beacon for the rest of the country, and I think we should take the lead in moving this forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Director Arntz, City Attorney. My name is Alec Bash. I've been before you many times in the past. I used to work for the city many years. First, I'd like to congratulate Director Arntz on having another error-free election in San Francisco. I know that's not an easy task. It's something for which he should be commended. But I do want to talk about the open source voting system, which I think Susan Pfeiffer said, and I'd like to associate myself with all of her comments. Very critical that the city move forward on this. I believe it would be important to have a schedule for the production of an RFP, to hire a consultant to develop the parameters and requirements for the system. That schedule should be something in which there's an opportunity for citizen input, so that there can be some oversight both by citizens and by the commissioners. In last year's budget, the original budget request was for $2.3 million. $300,000 was allocated with the other $2 million knocked out. I believe that should be put into this year's budget, even though the consulting work will probably not be done in time for the budget cycle, but it could be put into this year's budget, and understanding reach with the mayor's office that it be held on reserve until such time as the consultant's report is completed, so that it could then go forward, not as a supplemental in the city budget process, but as a budgetary item, which is then called out of reserve when the department has adequate information to proceed with that. The basis for this extraordinary step would be the major cost savings that would be associated with an open source system, where off-the-shelf hardware could be used with open source code that was already developed, so costs would be greatly reduced during the time when the city is facing some major cutbacks. This would be pound-wise and possibly penny foolish, but very pound-wise. So I would encourage the commission to urge Director Arntz to proceed along those lines as he begins work on next year's budget. I believe there need to be monthly written progress reports on both the RFP and the study, on which there would be an opportunity for public comment at the commission meetings each month. And the overall goals would be to have a general public license, GPL, for the open source code, and to have an election system in place by 2019. I would urge the commission to adopt this policy that there not be any further RFPs for closed source black box systems beyond that two-year extension that is already underway. And
your time is up. Thank you.
Finally, that this be a priority for the department as well as for the city. Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Would you like, I can do it, or do you want? I'll do it. Sure. Okay, I'll do it.
Hi, my name is Kristen Tiash. I'm a voter in San Francisco, and I want to reiterate what this woman was saying about the hacking. And this is the first time that I think, well, no, this is not the first time that we've seen that the that our votes can be hacked, and that we need a more secure system. And so I want to just echo the concern and also urge John Arntz to move forward with the secure, publicly owned, open source voting systems. And that's all.
Thank you.
My name is Catherine Kettman. I'm a software developer and I'm in favor of open source. I understand things don't move very fast sometimes in city government.
Can I ask you to pull the mic down towards your mouth?
Okay.
Thanks.
Name Catherine Kettman, software developer, in favor of open source. I work for the city of Oakland and I realized that city government doesn't always move very fast. But I think it's time for an accounting to the public of where you stand with moving toward open source, what the roadblocks might have been or might still be, and whether you have your technical team in place, and whether you have a project plan and a projected rollout. I think this information would be important to the public, as well as some information about how you plan to test and prove the validity of the software and make sure that it's secure ongoing. It's not a big, it is a big step to change your election system, and it's a very important step, and I hope you get down to it pretty soon.
Thank you. Any other public comment on item 2?
Hi everybody, my name is Nanda Rich. I am a social science researcher and a native of the city. I relocated to Washington, D.C. and have recently returned, and when I went to vote I was handed a Sharpie and a stack of paper. Never have I felt less secure in my vote being counted. I still to this day don't know if it has. If we have an answer in open source, I don't understand why everyone keeps buying the Ford Pinto. We know it's going to explode. This election was not error-free. I don't know if error-free actually exists, but I think if we have a solution and we have money set aside to the solution, it behooves us to follow that path and do everything we can to make things work. There's lots of enmeshment with Microsoft, which doesn't make sense to me. If you follow the money, that's always a mistake. I was a poll monitor this time around, and at every location, at every polling site, you can see people's names, addresses, and phone numbers, but there is no public access to voting and ensuring an accurate vote count. So I think it's important to this city. It's important to the people of this city. Thank you.
Excuse me, can you tell me your name again? You said it, but I couldn't catch the first name.
Sure, Nanda?
Nanda. Thank you. Any other public comment on item 2? Thank you. Moving on to item 3, approval of the minutes for the October 19, 2016 meeting. Do we have a motion?
I move to approve the minutes from our previous meeting.
I second that motion.
Any commissioner comment? Any public comment? Seeing none, we'll take a vote. Commissioner John?
Yes.
Commissioner Yu?
Yes.
Commissioner Savant?
Yes.
I vote yes. Commissioner Harris?
Yes.
Commissioner Donaldson?
Abstain? Wasn't here.
If you're going to abstain, we have to take a vote on whether to allow you to abstain, so if you, it might be easier to, thank you. Commissioner Jordanek?
Yes.
The vote is unanimous to approve. Moving on to item 4, commissioners' reports.
Okay, I'll start off. I want to, so let's see, I know the election review is not on today's agenda, but I still want to report that the BOPEC met 2 weeks ago, and we did discuss the election. And I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail, but I'll just mention a few highlights. One is kind of review the numbers again of challenged vote by mail ballots, and the percent was down quite far from the previous elections, which is good. I think it was around 1.1% or so. And I also presented kind of a preliminary document with some of my own observations and suggestions. And the main ones around the suggestions are mostly around how like the summary results page is reported to the public, and it's not obvious to the public and the media who's winning elections, particularly with the multi-winner elections like school board and community college board, and also the RCV races. So those were, and there are some other things I noted, and that's available on the agenda packet for the last OPEC meeting. Next, I wanted to say that I was able to watch online the Budget and Finance Committee meeting where they discussed the contract extension, and I encourage the Commission to review that video. I can send out a link and then with a point in time in the video for you to watch it. But a couple of things I wanted to mention about it, and maybe Director Arntz can speak more to it, is that for starters, the budget amount is $2.3 million for 2 years, and that's 25% higher for the license and warranties for the software and hardware, and it's 33% higher for the election services. And the point I wanted to make is just that, you know, this contract extension kind of shows one of the advantages for open source, because we're paying 25% more for a voting system that has not changed at all, and we're not actually even going to be using it this next year. So that's $500,000 for 1 year. And then the other thing I wanted to mention about the meeting is that the agenda item is that they amended the ordinance to require that Director Arntz give the board a report in the next 2 budget cycles about the progress in the open source voting system. So I was, Director Arntz, I was hoping that you could include the open source project in your monthly reports so that the Commission can know what's happening. Or even if nothing's happening, just to state that there's no update for that month. And thank you. And then the last thing is that a group from San Diego, just a couple that's doing a documentary on election issues in California, interviewed me about what open source voting is and what we're doing in San Francisco. And then lastly, at the previous meeting I said that I was hoping to have some sort of an item for us to talk about with regard to internet voting, but I didn't have time to prepare anything, so to do that in a future meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other commissioner reports?
Several items. First, my conflicts, which had caused me to miss a few BOPEC meetings, are finally done and in the past. Very happy to say.
Congratulations.
Thank you, sweet Jesus. The other news I have is mainly about the secretary search. So I have actually had the 56 initial applicants. I've done 2 rounds of weeding out, first to see if anybody essentially lacked any kind of basic qualification on the first round. I got it down to 27, and then I was looking for specific qualities, background in either elections or as a secretary or working government service, and now I have that down to 10. At this point, I do want to ask how to proceed. Should I further cut that down by providing my own phone interviews with these people, or if the Commission so wants, if you wanted to review any of the resumes yourself before I start contacting people, I thought this would be the ideal time to do that. I wasn't sure which way to go about it, so I kind of stopped at that round 2 for these 10 people. But I wanted your feedback before I knew how to proceed.
So I'll respond for myself and welcome other commissioner comments. And I know you sent me an email about that. I apologize, I didn't get a chance to respond. I think that 10 is too many for us to interview. My suggestion would be that I'd be willing to take a look at those 10 that you have identified them, and maybe give my comments on whether we can narrow that down a little bit more, and then you can call the ones that are remaining and pick perhaps your 4 or so favorites, unless there's just, if there are more than that appear to be stellar candidates, we can certainly interview them. I haven't seen any of the applications, but I'd be happy to take a look at the 10 that you have. Maybe we can narrow that down a little bit, and then you can make some phone calls And then we can arrange, typically we have a special elections commission meeting to interview the secretary during hours that works for everybody. So and that has to be a confidential process for the interview process as well. So unless anybody else has any other suggestions or better ideas, why don't we proceed with that? Okay, any other commissioner comment?
I will send out an email then regarding the login and password and the named individuals for feedback. But do we have any specific goals as far as how many final candidates that we want to put forward to the board?
Yeah, why don't you send, just, I have the password already, so why don't you send me the 10 that you've selected? I will take a look at their applications. I will try to narrow that down. My suggestion is for the interview process that we have at least 3 people. 4 would be fine. More than that is challenging unless there's a really good reason.
I was
to
thinking
do that.
3, so I'm glad we're on the same page.
Anybody else disagree with that? Okay, great. Do we have any other commissioner reports on item 4? I just want to remind everybody that next month we will have our annual election of the officers. So I hope that we can have some people. I'm not going to be running for either office. I know we've got some people who would be great for that. So I just want to have people opening up their ideas for who can be nominated and who would be willing to serve on that. Any other commissioner comment on item 4? Any public comment on item 4? Seeing none, we will move on to item 5, the director's report.
All right, so since the last commission meeting in November, I certified the election on December 6th. I think the mayor signed the declaration of results that the board passed last week. I think he signed today. So we'll probably drive the charter amendments to the Secretary of State's office tomorrow for chaptering so that there's no delay getting the amendments chaptered. As mentioned previously, the contract extension for the voting system was heard in committee on December 7th. Then the first reading at the board took place on December 13th. And the second reading will occur, I think it's January 10th is the first meeting. So the first meeting that the board's back, they'll have the second reading of the contract. We've already started considering how to implement the non-citizens voting for school board elections. That's going to take some work. We've already been in contact and have spoken with the election management system vendor to determine if we can bring those voters into the registration database, but on a confidential basis. So that way we can precinct and we can issue ballot types and things like that using the current system without having to create a whole other election for a rather small set of voters. Right now, no one knows until it happens the number of voters that would partake in these elections. Right now, I've had estimates from 3,000 to 8,000 potential voters. I've also met with the school district, also with Supervisor Marr's office. I've had a general conversation with them. So that's been ongoing. It'll continue as we move forward. The first election won't occur until November 2018, so it's not. We don't have to make it happen within the next few months. The department's already has undertaken debriefings and conversations regarding the election, getting together, looking at the plan versus what happened, and also getting a sense of where we can make any adjustments or improvements going forward. Several of us attended the annual elections conference last week in Sacramento on Thursday and Friday. Every year we go up there. It's called New Law. I've already spoken with the mayor's office regarding identifying a consultant for speccing out the development of a voting system based on open source software. We're trying to get a meeting set up in the probably second or third week of January. That'll include me, the mayor's office, the Committee on Information Technology, which is the group that provided the $300,000 in the department's budget to conduct the study. And then also the Department of Technology representatives will be there as well. We've already begun the development of our budget for the next 2 fiscal years, so that has included planning for the non-citizen voting. And then I don't know how the development of voting system, right now there's no cost put into our budget, so that's a conversation with the mayor's office. It will be money added for the next fiscal year. Oh, also, we're working on the process and the information to conduct the, as I mentioned before, what's called a Melrose election. It's a development district election. It'll occur on Treasure Island, or the development will occur on Treasure and Iroquois Islands. The election will take place, the election day is on January 24th at a special agenda item at the board hearing. I'll be there, I'll open the envelope and I'll announce the winner. There's only, I think, 2 ballots, the developer and the authority. That's taking some time. Also, we started the process of thinking about how to implement the conditional registration, which starts January 1st. Since we don't have an election right away, we actually can observe and talk to other counties that implemented their special elections in 2017. Monterey is the first county to implement conditional registration. They have an election on January 24th, so I can't go down there for that to the Melrose election. But I think we'll probably send some folks down there. If we don't go election day, I might go, say, on Friday or Saturday even. And conditional registration is where people who are not registered in the registration database, but they close the registration 15 days before an election, they can still vote, they can still register provisionally or conditionally. If they go to the county's elections office and then complete a registration affidavit at the office, and then receive a conditional ballot, or it's like a provisional ballot in a sense. So then once we bring the ballots in from the polling places, we'll determine if that person voted provisional ballot or tried to vote elsewhere in the election. So that's a major change actually with the election process, and we started our process of reviewing the impact and trying to get ready for that. Also, we've started the process. We've already issued our annual website usability survey. I think we emailed it to 75,000 people for which we have email addresses, and we've also sent some social media postings about it. And it's not on our website. I'll get up there tomorrow. So there's a brief rundown since the last meeting.
Any commissioner comments?
I have a few questions. For starters, I was wondering if you could explain the relationship this ordinance has about the contract extension with the budget process. Does the money again need to be approved during the budget process, or assuming the board passes the ordinance?
Right. So the money, the city will have to fund its contract, right?
Well, in other words, if the board passes the ordinance, it might be more of a formality, but will this appear as an item in the budget that the board and mayor would again have to approve?
No, it'll be in the Argus budget. It'll be in a sub object in a category. It won't be a line item in the budget.
Okay. And then the meeting that you mentioned is going to happen in January. Is that the full COIT or just a representative of COIT?
No, the representative from COIT. Yeah.
Okay. And then the other question is, for this contract extension, I'm wondering, why is it that the money for this extension doesn't have to go before COIT, but like the open source does? Is this kind of, the ordinance is kind of one pathway to receiving the funds, or because our current voting system is also sort of a technology, piece of technology that the city is paying for. You understand my question?
Yeah, I don't know the answer, but my guess is that developing a voting system is a project, so it doesn't exist yet, whereas a voting system is something that exists. So COIT would pick up the conversation regarding implementing something that would require development, whereas the voting system has already gone through the testing and certification.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Other commissioner comments or questions?
So you said that on the 6th you certified the election. What are the other steps beyond the certification that need to happen in the department? What kind of procedures do you do to wind down the department to do your winter cleaning, as it were? Or does everybody just go on vacation for a few months?
No. Well, so there's a lot of archiving has to take place, like the ballots, the envelopes, it all has to be set for retention. There's a lot of work that was, there's a freeze on any work on the registration database after the registration deadline. So there's a backlog of just a bit of changes and cancellations, new registrations and things like that that occur. There's also just a lot of review of process. This is our time to do. It's fresh in our minds. And also trying to get people together from various divisions and have those conversations. Putting away all the materials, cleaning the materials, making sure they're not broken at the warehouse, taking count of all the rubber bands, pens, glue sticks, and whatnot that go out to the polling places, so we can get that the next items in our budget, so we have the funds to purchase replacements. Then the budget's right on us too. So already we're meeting on the operation and the budget. And since we do 2-year budgets now, we're trying to forecast into not just 17-18, but also 18-19. I didn't put it in here, but we've also been undertaking plans to move the warehouse from Pier 48 to Pier 31. So we've enlisted DPW through a work order, and I'll be at the board actually, the committee in early December to get a release of reserve funds to do the build out at Pier 31. So we've been engaged in that work. We've had several meetings on that with DPW and the port, and also amongst ourselves, trying to figure out how we're going to lay out the floor plan, and also change the processes according to a smaller footprint at Pier 31. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different items that go on. We send letters and feedback to the poll workers. We send feedback to the field election deputies. We ask for their feedback to come back to us, try to get a sense of what their thoughts are. Right now we're doing a usability survey on the website. We'll get that information back in a month. We're going to meet probably in January. That's our set time to look at the website, see where we make improvements. So yeah, there's just a lot of things that people don't realize that it takes time, takes attention.
One of my other questions is, how do you plan on managing the non-citizens voting in San Francisco, since I know items like CalVoter or IMES aren't perhaps set up to deal with San Francisco's rules? How is the process supposed to go forward with that? Could you describe it?
No, that's why we had the initial conversation with the vendor. We want to see, based on legislative change in San Francisco.
Wait, the vendor of CalVoter or the vendor
of the election management system.
Okay.
In San Francisco, to get a sense of what the current system, how it's, what it can offer, this change in our process, and then to determine what changes need to take place. So that hasn't been set yet.
And lastly, you talked about conditional registration, which, as you said, is a big deal going forward. How was that approved? Was that a state law or a city law? Because this is actually, I think, the first I'm hearing about this.
Yeah, it's state law.
Do you know which one?
No. Years ago.
That's it for me.
I was just wondering a little more about the Belarus election. I was looking on the department site and I was seeing information about it. Can you just explain a little more about what that election involves? Is it use of the election equipment? Is it administered like any other election, just for that district? How does that work?
You want to grab it?
So there's a state law called Belarus, and basically you create sort of special benefit districts, right. And typically, the people who own property within one of the districts or within one of these special benefits districts have to vote essentially to impose a tax on themselves in exchange for certain things. There are numerous Belarus districts throughout the city. Often the districts will be very small, and you'll have an election with like 1 or 2 or 3 voters because there's a very small number of property owners, and often the voters aren't human beings. They're like corporations, governmental entities, etc. So it's sort of, it's an election, but it's very, very different from what is sort of colloquially understood as an election. It's really like the creation of a taxable unit within the city.
Yep. Okay. And, but is that, does that, so how many voters is this? Would that be?
Two.
Actually, 2 voters.
Yeah, often the number is less than 10. I mean, there have been some south of Market where you have like, 5 to 7 voters, and each voter is a corporation that owns multiple floors.
So essentially, and it would be hand counted, obviously, I would assume.
What's that?
It'd be hand counted, or?
Yeah, and the local election law doesn't apply. It's all sort of set forth in state law. There are very specific procedures, but usually it's just a matter of someone from the department opening a small number of envelopes, and usually the result is sort of known in advance because
Sure.
Often they're uncontested as well.
Thank you.
And just so I can research this later, Mello-Roos, how is that spelled?
MELLO space ROOS.
Thank you.
Another question, I was just wondering, so the election equipment, it needs to be stored for now, however long it is, tell me November 18th, because it's 24 months. So almost 24 months, 20 months or something like that. Anything special need to be done to store the equipment for that length of time? And is that something that we are paying the vendor for at all, or is that entirely on the Department of Elections to manage that storage?
So no, the equipment's in the department's warehouse, so we manage the storage. And the touchscreen units have to be charged, strictly charged once a month, so we do that. It's on a timer, so we hook everything up to cords and set the timer. There will be maintenance next year, so all equipment will be undergo review and maintenance. So anything that's found during maintenance to be lacking will be replaced or repaired. So even though there's not a scheduled election, the maintenance will continue, which is actually good. And then in 2018, the first election is in June, so the primary election in June, we go to our primary. And then, so we'll do the repairs and maintenance next year, probably in August, September, somewhere in there. And then we'll go into the June election with the equipment under that maintenance. And after the June election, we'll do another maintenance review before the November 2018 election.
Thank you. And one last thing for the record, I checked this out. I'm sorry I didn't check it earlier, but I'm fairly sure that, yes, we have the same person as the salesperson, but the fact that they changed companies is actually a matter of acquisition, just for the record. In other words, Sequoia was acquired by Dominion, right? So just wanted to state that for the record in case anybody.
I had one more question, and this relates to something one of the public commenters said. And they were asking about or suggested the idea of whether to request additional funds in this next budget cycle, for once the planning phase completes. And because I'm just looking ahead, like assuming that, let's just say for the sake of discussion, that the planning phase completes, like late next fall or something. And then if we didn't request additional funds, then it wouldn't be until like August that, for the following budget cycle to finish where we could actually start the development. So I just wanted to know, is that a conversation we're going to be having with the mayor's office next month about how to approach this next budget with respect to the project?
No, I think the focus is on actually speccing out the system and see what it means as far as cost is concerned, and also time and effort, and what sort of resources are required. Because right now, cost is one of the major questions. There is no set cost that's out there, and I think that, in my experience, at least in the city, if something doesn't have a number that's substantiated, it's not going to get any funding. And I think this is where this voting system is right now. You have $300,000 to spec it out, and then from that process is where you start to determine what cost to allocate, what funding to allocate to the system. But just to set money aside right now at this point, I don't think it's going to happen the next fiscal year.
Okay.
So as a follow-on to that, what will the goal of this meeting be then, to kick off the project at that point? What is the objective of the meeting at that?
Well, to continue the conversation we had before the election, I mean, we started, there's a lot, the elections actually interrupt a lot of things, you have to realize.
Of course, understand.
So we started the meetings before the election, so now we'll continue. There's been changes. There's a new budget director in the mayor's office. There's a new director of COIT. Shannon is no longer the executive director. The director of the Department of Technology is moving on to another position. So we'll have to bring people back into the room and just have that initial conversation with some folks, and also try to set the next steps. The mayor's the one that's really carrying this forward too, and not the board, I'll say that. So the mayor's put a lot of attention on this to make sure that this does move forward.
Who is the new budget director?
Melissa Whitehouse.
And when do you expect actual progress on the spec? When do you think that would start?
I mean, let me meet with them,
I mean, are they, so we have $300,000, are they the ones that you're gonna hire a contractor and interview someone, or how?
No, it has to go out to bid. You have to get there's a process, and so that there has to be an RFP that's drafted. The Department of Technology does, they do far more RFPs for technical projects than I do. So I requested that the Department of Technology write the RFP and issue it. There will be a panel that has to select from the applicants in response to the RFP potential candidates to be the consultant. I'll be on that panel. Yeah. So, but all that, I mean, as far as timing is concerned, I don't know.
And the $300,000 that's been appropriated for this does not expire, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
Following up on this, I would like, we've already said that we would request updates on this project, but more than just an update, I think I would really appreciate having an overarching timeline. I'm very open to that changing, but I don't know if we are behind or ahead or where we need to be. I just know that our final is, I would ideally like this by 2018 when we actually have an election. But I don't really understand enough of the process to know how much time is required at each step, and then where are we in that process. So going forward, just that would be something that I would request, and I don't know how much approval we need to make that, if that is something the rest of the commissioners are interested in. But before the election, this election, I really didn't give it much thought, because I know the election takes up so much time. But now the election has happened, and this is now our priority. I don't really have any reference point for where we need to be in this, not having ever done a project of this scale in a department before. But it's just something I would like.
Any other commissioner comment?
I guess I would, yeah, just to follow on. Out of this meeting, I don't know when it's gonna happen, but if we could at least by the February meeting here, I think it would be very helpful to know some sort of a timeline. So I guess I just that be one of the objectives out of this meeting, is to come up with some kind of a timeline. Because we talked about 2019 was sort of the original idea, and we thought that was possible, but now it's already, I think, further than anticipated before we're not even under contract yet with anybody.
I think the original goal was June of 2020 with the perhaps piloting parts of it in 2019 or even as early as 2018. But with the current schedule, it sounds like the earliest, unless we request additional funds, it doesn't seem like we could start the actual development until following the budget cycle of 2017, which would already, so we wouldn't even be starting the development until August 2017. So.
Sure, I'm just concerned that in the RFP process, create, select, hire, could have a bit of time, but
yeah, I just recurrence.
Sure.
I think that almost proves my point. I mean, I think I just said 2018, and I remember 2 years ago, we discussed this, that was the original goal, and apparently it's changed sometimes around there. And I don't know if it's either me not paying attention or just updates not being brought forward fully, but it's kind of clear, I don't feel that we're all on the right page, even having specific goals. So I think that almost proves my point of where do we want to be and how do we break that down. I do think there is a need for this.
Any public comment on item 5, director's report? Seeing, can you come up to the microphone so we can hear you?
Kettman again. I really support the idea of having a timeline, and if you bring in a consultant to spec out the project, you should give them a period of time in which they should complete that. So there would be a back and forth with the consultant saying, okay, we want it in 3 months. And then they might say, oh no, I can't do it in 3 months. Well, when can you do it? Because you really need to have a timeline, and especially with budget considerations, the more efficiently you can break down each step, the more efficiently the whole thing is going to move forward.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Moving on to item 6, future agendas. Commissioner Jordanek, I know you would like internet voting on a future agenda, and just get me your materials and I'll put that on the next agenda if you have time to do that. As I mentioned, we will have the officer elections at the next meeting as well. Any other commissioner requests for agenda items?
I have a suggestion. And this may even be required by our charter, but I don't think we had a formal review of the November election, did we?
No, I have not received the reports yet from the Department of Elections, but when we get those,
Okay.
I presume we'll have them for next election, but
Oh,
we have to have the
I found the
reports
vote
first. Oh, you did? Okay, well, I didn't know that they were in, so we will put that on the next agenda.
One other thing I'd like to see would be actually kind of a summary and analysis and discussion of SB 450. It's the voting centers law. And I've already read the law and I think I understand it, but keyword think. I am not a lawyer, so I would always like it if a lawyer tells me that what I thought was right or if I have it wrong. The reason for that is because from an administrative point of view, it probably changes the election more so than any other law that has come up. Usually one of my jobs during the elections that I work in San Mateo County is ballot reconciliation, of which I essentially kind of become a little detective to figure out what went wrong. And having this law completely changes that, considering who is going to be administering these ballots compared to somebody that only does it for one day. In which flexibility do we have? Are these minimum requirements or are they maximum requirements? Generally, how many people could we expect to call from the roles of poll workers that we don't think are exactly up to par? These are probably very big questions, so I actually would like to have a further in-depth conversation about it, and I know that kind of puts a lot on Josh White for that, so apologies for putting him on the spot. But since it is such a large piece of election administration and probably the biggest change I've seen since I've got interested in elections, I really would like to have a discussion about it and to know more about it.
Other commissioner comments on items for future agendas? Public comment? Seeing none, we will adjourn the meeting. It is 6:50. Thanks everyone for coming.
Still nothing.